Hi, Lynton Allan here, and this is Sketch and Tell. During these challenging times of the COVID-19 lockdown, I'm going to continue with a series of art and storytelling called Colours of Australia. And even though I'm in my own backyard, which is not too inspiring, but I'd like to transport you in your imagination to the centre of Australia, where we have this monolithic boulder, this massive rock called Uluru, that has attracted sojourners and tourists from all around the world to just look at it and spend time there. And I'm going to paint the rock and just share a few little tips along the way, and then share some of my thoughts about Uluru. Let's begin, and because we are in those wide open spaces in central Australia, I'm going to put a horizon line very low down, which will give us a great expanse of sky. And then on that horizon line, I will put that very familiar shape of Uluru. So I'll just put that here. Now, even though I know that the rock surface of Uluru changes colour right through the day depending on what light is on it, I am going to use the very traditional reds that we see in many of our photos. So I will block in Uluru with that red colour. And while I have the red pastel, I will then just put some of the red down here into the earth, which is part of the red soil that is unique to this area. Even though, again, I know that the landscape can change very quickly after rain. You can just have a whole lot of grass growing and shrubs and flowers, but mostly it's that red soil that people do remember. I've got some orange here, which will just put a little bit of that, first of all, into the ground. And then I'm going to use it as a highlight colour and just put that up here on the top of the rock and just drag some of it lightly down across the surface. And use another one of the ochre colours, and I'm just mixing up those earth colours, just trying to make a little bit of interest here in the red soil. And while we are looking at the rock, I'll just leave that there for a moment and block in the sky around Uluru. And I will start with a fairly light blue and just block this around. And try and give some movement, just a little bit of movement to the sky as I just place the colour on and around, and then mix in some darker blue, and I will then go for some probably pinks and purples to, again, just create some interest in the sky. Let's just put this up here. And we'll go for a little bit of nice, what I call dusty pink. And I'm going to now go for some ultramarine blue, which will be used for creating just some of the detail in the rock face. But before I do, I might just grab a little bit of magenta and just starting from the bottom, just drag that upwards, again just mixing that into the red and the orange that's already there, and I'll put a little bit of that down into the soil, and then create some of those deep eroded parts of the rock surface that are, again, very unique to Uluru. And just do that with the dark blue, and here. And again, I'll probably darken this blue a little further along with some dark purple or dark brown. We'll just see how we go. As we think about Uluru, and I'll again just block in some more colours as I'm now just wanting us to just think about the actual rock. And I guess for those, well, I've got this red colour here, I'll just put a little bit of that into the sky, again, just to connect the sky with the earth, colour-wise. Put that up here. But I would like to suggest that for those who have been and those who are intending to go see it more than just a place to tick off your bucket list as I've been to the rock. But see it as a pilgrimage. See it as a place that you can actually go to and slow down. And I'd like to suggest that Uluru is one of those unique places, and there are others around the world, but for us here in Australia, Uluru is one of those unique places that I would call a sacred place. It's a place where you can slow down and you can start to sense your smallness in this amazing world and universe that we find ourselves in. Sometimes we need to put things in perspective. We are not in the center of the universe. There are things that are bigger than us. And looking at whether it is the rock or whether it's looking at the expanse of the sky above, or whether it's just looking at the wide open spaces, or whether it's just thinking about the long distances that it has taken to get to Uluru. It does give you a sense of your own vulnerability, your own smallness, and that can be a healthy thing at times. But as you slow down and also unplug, hopefully from technology and all the distractions of modern day life, you will also find that you can perhaps do some exploring, not around the physical parts of Uluru, but perhaps within, and start to examine your own inner life. This is a good spiritual exercise, to start thinking about the things that matter in life, the things that are of value, the things that are worth putting your time and your energy into. And as you do that, perhaps whether it is in the actual space around you or whether it's in that inner space, you might get a sense of a connection with something other than you, something life-giving, something that is the source of life, and inviting you to have a healthy connection with it. Let's just add a little bit more colour here now. Uluru is surrounded at the base by, we'll just go for another colour here, by a whole lot of vegetation, gum trees and low shrubs. So we'll just put a little bit of green around the base, and just a touch of green here and now in the landscape. I'll put some more green here just to help it stand out. There we go. A little bit here, a little bit here. I'd like to, as I again just keep adding some colour, I'd like to share some of my own thoughts, my own reflections about Uluru, the rock, and how it has sort of shaped my own thinking about God, about that sacred other that we can have a connection with. And first of all, I would like to suggest that Uluru, and I'll now go for a little bit of a darker brown. Uluru, even though it is a special place, I sometimes see it as a symbol, a natural symbol pointing to another centre. One that you don't have to spend a lot of money flying out to or a lot of time travelling to. I'm referring to the centre that each of us have in our own lives. It's interesting that if you fly over Uluru and look at it from a very different perspective from above, it no longer takes on that very traditional shape that we see in photos. It is a heart shape. And I think that is very significant, that it is pointing to that other sacred centre that you and I have within us, that it's worth taking time to go to and explore and to sense that connection that we can have with God. And so let's come back to the rock. Physically, if you were to walk around the rock, it would be around about 10 kilometres. If you were to just go from one end to the other, it's about 4 kilometres. We're no longer allowed to climb it, but for those who did, you would know that it's just under 500 metres. So it's pretty impressive on its own, just standing there. And if that was all that there was of the rock, I'd say that's enough. But there's actually more to it. And geologists tell us that Uluru is actually part, again, of something bigger than what we see on the surface. It goes down deep into the red soil, and it is part of a solid mass of sedimentary rock that was laid down a long time ago. And this massive sedimentary rock, you could almost liken it to a mountain deep under the earth. It is, well, they say it's anywhere from 3+ kilometres deep, and from east to west, it is around about 100 kilometres. So even if Uluru is experiencing erosion slowly over time, wind and rain, and just time itself is stripping away the surface of Uluru. But even if this were flattened, there's so much more to it, deep under the earth. And so as I think about Uluru's, just its physical shape, top and hidden, visible and hidden, again I think of something that we can go to in a world that is full of change. A change that seems to be accelerating every year. A change which is happening not just over time, but the institutions that we might have grown up with thinking that they would last forever seem to just go almost overnight. There are storms and shifting sands around Uluru as they are around us. And yet, Uluru seems to stand there as a monument, an ancient monument of stability and strength within the culture and a continent of change. And so just having that visible from the top is enough to give some sense of stability to look at it, but to realise it's part of something bigger. There's strength there. And in a moment of, I guess as I mentioned right at the beginning, of immense change that's happening in our own lives and our own culture, where we find that the towers of strength and refuge that, again, we used to think were there forever, whether it be money, power, whether it be our jobs, our careers, whether it be our plans for the future, whether it is even our health, these are all being challenged by an insignificant, small, invisible virus. And it's almost like it is ripping away the illusion that these things, which have all their proper place in our lives, but if we are grasping for them and holding on to them tightly, trusting in them and hoping that they will provide our sense of identity and provide for our strength and security to last us through our lives, it's almost like the veil has been ripped away and we're realising that can be taken away from us very quickly. It reminds me of a story, and please forgive me, I have forgotten the exact details, but it reminds me of a story of a man who was very famous for climbing mountains. He'd conquered many of the high peaks around the world, but he became particularly famous in the States. He would go to certain cities where there were very high skyscrapers. He was called the original Spider-Man, and he would climb those high rises using nothing but his bare hands and feet. No grappling hooks, no ropes, no assistance. And people would gather down the bottom of the buildings and they would watch as he climbed, and there was always, when he got to the top, a police presence, and they would arrest him and they would caution him and tell him please don't do it again, and he would go and plan his next climb. And then there came the final climb, again a particular high rise, and he was about 3/4 of the way up when he went to hold on to something, and he appeared from those looking from below to slip, and he tragically fell to his death. When they were investigating, they found that what he had reached out for to hold on to for his next hold looked like a ledge of concrete. But what it was a whole mass of bunched up cobwebs that was covered in soot and grime and concrete dust that had come up from below and had covered those cobwebs. And so what looked solid, that would hold his weight, when he grabbed a hold of it, there was nothing there. And I think for many of us, and it hurts and it's painful and it's tragic. I mean, my own work has just gone overnight. I'm officially unemployed. For artists and storytellers, there is no work. But for others, they're in a much worse position because we're finding that what we thought was strong and reliable and secure is no longer there. And there is a lot of anxiety. And there is a lot of understandable fear. And there's a lot of questioning about, well, what is there in life that we can perhaps rely on? I see it as an invitation to give us more clarity to what is real and what isn't. To do that inner journey to the center of our lives, to our heart of hearts. And within that center, to discover that there is a rock. And this rock is ancient. It's always been there with us. We just need to discover it or rediscover it and reconnect with it. It's one that is solid. It's one that is not going to be stripped away and taken away by whatever's happening on the surface and around us. It's something that can give us a center that is reliable in our lives. And I am talking about God being our rock. Now, if you're thinking, well, that sounds a little bit impersonal, I'd like to look at this word rock, God being like a rock, in a slightly different way. If you think about certain friends that you perhaps have grown up with, maybe it is just one friend. Someone who you meet with maybe regularly, maybe once in a year. But as soon as you meet up, you know that you can be open and honest with them. You know that they are trustworthy. They're reliable. You know that there's someone who perhaps, you've really travelled some distance, you've shared stories, they know you through and through, they know your good parts, they know your not so good parts, and yet they haven't given up on you. They haven't gone off for someone else, they are with you and for you, and you can trust them. We often call those friends rock solid friends. And I'm going to just share one of those people in my life. And it might seem a little strange, but this person is someone who looks exactly like me. Someone who has the same voice, the same mannerisms. Someone who has the same incredible good looks, not really. But someone who even has the same DNA as I. And I'm talking about my twin brother. The only thing I have over my twin is that I am 7 minutes older than he is. But nonetheless, as we were growing up, we shared a lot in common. There was a lot of sort of competition and a lot of rivalry that you would expect. But there were moments when it was good to have a twin. And one of those moments was a time when, as a family, we had moved to a new suburb in the Brisbane, where we used to live up in Queensland, and we were going into a new school at year 9 level. And we figured out very quickly that in this school, which did have a bit of a reputation, there were a group of students who were a year level above us. They were in year 10. And they were kind of the bullies in the school. And my way of dealing with that was just to keep away from them. But you can't do that always in a school setting. And one lunchtime I was sitting next to my brother and I was just munching on an apple when one of those guys just walked up to where we were, grabbed the apple that I was eating and just squashed it into my face. It was a shock, and it was embarrassing. And as others were laughing and he turned around, without thinking I picked up what was left of that apple and I threw it at him, and it hit him in the back of the head. And he swung around, and I won't repeat exactly what he said, but it was pretty colourful. And basically it was, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to get my mates and we're going to come back, and if you're not here, we'll find you. And we're going down the oval and we're going to have it out down there. And I knew that this was going to be one of those original cage fights where everybody hears about the upcoming fight and they quickly pour down the oval, form a big circle. For some reason the teachers are absent, still up in the lunchroom. And you and your opponent have to go into that circle and you have to fight it out. almost to the death. One person lies on the ground, the other walks out the victor. And I knew who was going to be who because I'm not a fighter. It's just not in me. And I was sitting there absolutely petrified. Back he comes with his mates, and they stand in front of us, and he points to my brother and says, right, let's go down to the oval. And my twin brother just said, yeah, let's do this. And I looked at him, and he said, it's okay. Just leave it with me. And down the oval we went. The circle was already being formed, and as we were going down, I started to realise what was going on. You see, even though we look identical on the outside, and this is the amazing miracle of twins, we're actually quite different on the inside. We have different personalities. We have different gifts and abilities, strengths and weaknesses. At that time, I was, and probably still am, I'm the introvert. And I'm the one who likes to read and to daydream and to, at that time, and still do, I like the fine arts. My twin brother, even though he's exceptionally good at art, he's more the pragmatist, more the planner, more the practical, more the outgoing one, more the opportunist. And at that time, he wasn't so much interested in the fine arts, but he was very interested in martial arts. And for about a year, he had been doing some fairly serious taekwondo training. And I can remember him coming back home after training nights, and he would be trying to show me some holds and punches and kicks and expressing his frustration that he couldn't actually do them proper because he was always being instructed by his teachers not to use them in the wrong settings, but to only use it for self-defense or helping someone else. And he saw this as a golden opportunity to just let loose. And I can remember standing in that crowd and standing in awe as my twin brother absolutely flattened that guy in a matter of minutes. There was no bloodshed, but it was my brother and myself who were the ones walking back out of the circle up to the school buildings. And I had a plan already formulated in my head. Even though I would not have said it this way, I was thinking, I've got my rock. I'm just going to stay real close to my twin. And if anyone tries to do business with me, they've got to get through him first. As usual, I don't really think these things through practically, because the reality was, within a year and a half, my twin brother had left school. He had got an apprenticeship and saved money, travelled around Australia surfing, and then travelled overseas working with youth, and eventually met a beautiful Spanish girl whom he married, and he's been living over in Spain ever since. A fat lot of good that is for me. If I need someone to fight my battles and be my champion, he's not there physically. But I already knew, long before he left, that my twin brother was really not able to fight the battles that I was going to be facing. You see, many of the battles for me aren't external ones. I don't go looking for them. I might stumble into a few here and there, but most of the battles I face are internal ones. Who am I? My anxieties, my fears. Why am I putting myself down so often? Where do I fit into this crazy world? You see, my twin brother, and even if you're thinking of your best friend, they can only look from the outside in. They might be able to offer a little bit of advice, but they can't get inside our skin and help us internally. It took me years to find this out, but I realised there is only one centre that is a true centre. There is only one who can fill that heart space within us with a solid rock-like friendship that is going to last us not just through this life but for eternity. And eventually, when I was prepared to be humble enough to recognise that I can't do this on my own, that there was in fact someone reaching out to me and wanting to fill that space, and that presence was God, I discovered in that moment that there is a healthy connection we can have with that true centre, and it is like a rock. It's very personal. But we are invited to be part of a story that began a long time ago, and we can be part of it now. And that gives us a centre of place and purpose. We get a sense of creativity and courage to face whatever it is, because that presence, we know deep down, there's an inner knowing that that presence knows us through, God knows us through and through, but it's still there with us and for us. And more than that, God is wanting to bring out the best in us and help us to become the persons that we just struggle to become on our own. So in that heart connection, you do find, no matter what is going on around you, even if the whole things that you thought were reliable are being stripped away and taken away, in that heart connection with God as our rock, there is a source of genuine peace, joy, confidence, courage, and I use the word deliberately, comfort, which is not a little voice just saying, there, let me ruffle the pillow up for your head. The word comfort comes from that old English word fortitude, to put courage into someone, like a fort, like a refuge. And that is what you can tap into with God as your rock. I'm going to complete this painting, and as I do, please watch, it won't take long. Have a colourful day.